Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. You are watching Sunday Talks with Kellie and Lisa. I would be the Kellie portion of that equation.
And I'm the Lisa part.
Sorry, we are both dealing with some allergies and congestion and stuff, so please bear with us. We've been talking about manifestation apart from what is technically called law of attraction. There's been a huge backlash about law of attraction, and I've seen a lot of comments that I've had to delete from my YouTube channel. If you're not going to be respectful and kind to each other, I'm not going to leave your comment up. Thank you for watching, but if you're going to be hateful, your comments aren't going to stay up. So that's where we're starting today. I have my own ideas about why this backlash is happening, but what do you think?
I'm reminded of politicians here in the United States. We're going through some hot stuff right now in our political world, and a lot of it is the misinformation or the half truth. It's not being presented in proper ways or in ways that people can understand it. It's become a buzzword, and it's something that has been part of humanity since humanity came into existence. So, it's just become like this hot topic, trendy buzzword, and there's so much more to it than that.
There is. And I think, honestly, throughout human history, anytime something becomes trendy, it loses its original truth. I was talking with someone last night about Buddhism and the different forms of Buddhism, and I am not a Buddhist. Don't go there with me. But when you water it down and water it down and water it down and make it okay for the masses, you've lost a lot of the core beliefs, the core teachings that made it what it was supposed to be. And, I don't begrudge anyone practicing whatever they want to practice. But if you're kind of saying, okay, well, I like that from that religion, and I like this over here from this one, and oh, hey, that's a great idea, I'll take that too. You're combining everything for yourself, and you can't label it then. It is your own brand. It is your own form of everything. And that's wonderful for you. I'm not saying that's a bad idea. But what I'm saying is when you take things and you make them their own, your own, it's not that original thing anymore. And people have done that with law of attraction.
Yeah.
It's not what it was originally intended to be or how it was originally taught. And I think when you are focusing too much on money, and I have through the years read a whole lot of books and talked to a whole lot of other teachers and watched a whole lot of videos that different people have put out. And it has gotten away from live a happy, joyful, healthy life that we are all supposed to be doing. We are all intended to be healthy and happy and helping each other and being joyful and being grateful and being loving and kind and all those things. It's gone from that to being how to make money. I can show you how to make money. And I will tell you that's not what it was supposed to be. Not at all. So I think,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
pardon me. And not only that, it's when you're tapping into, I need to accumulate as much money as possible, you're
Yeah,
still living in a scarcity mindset or a fearful mindset. So
yeah,
you're not necessarily going to manifest the life of your dreams because you're so focused on that bank account. And, in today's society, it's important. You have to have money to survive.
yep.
Nobody wants to be like my parents at 85 living with their children because they
Right.
can't provide for themselves. And so it's, money is important, but it's not the only thing. And I think it's been distorted and, like you said, watered down so much that people just tune it out because it's it's hard to believe
Yeah,
when you see so much suffering in your own life and then, externally.
yeah.
So,
Well, and it's you have to start wherever people are.
mhm.
When I'm teaching an energy working class, I cannot assume that everyone knows what Reiki is. And if you are teaching people how to manifest their dream life, we're all different. We all have different dreams.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have been traumatized growing up, and they don't have self-esteem and they don't have self-confidence. They don't believe they deserve all of those things that you're telling them they should be dreaming about.
Right.
And I think that's where some people need to start. In my own journey, I had to start with being able to look myself in the eyes in a mirror. And nobody's talking about that when it comes
Yeah.
to manifestation. People aren't realizing that many, many people, not just in this country, but around the world, have been traumatized. They don't know how to dream. They've given up on dreams. Dreams, what's that? I had a dream one time. They're worried about, what am I going to eat today? Am I going to be able to fix things where I live that will make it where I can stay where I live? Am I going to be able to make sure my kids have a good education? Those are some people's dreams. And if you're not teaching people where they are, they're not going to understand what you're trying to teach them. It really is that simple. And nobody's realizing that. Not everybody wants money. Not everyone wants to be rich. There was a meme I saw on social media years ago that said, some people want a small cabin in the middle of nowhere on 80 acres with a garden and animals and all that. And that's very true. You can't assume everyone wants money. And
Right.
even the people who do want money, what do you want it for? I want money right now. I'm making a movie that requires a lot of money,
Yeah.
but money's not the end goal. And that's what I think a lot of people are missing. It's not the money. It's you want a safe place to live in a safe neighborhood,
Yeah.
or you want a good education for your kids. Whatever it is that you want, that requires money to get, the money's not the end goal. And that's not taught either. So we think,
No, it's that you're absolutely spot on. There are so many underlying principles to the law of attraction that need to be put in place that happen at the same time as those positive intentions or the affirmations and whatnot. It's all it's not necessarily a scaffold. It's not like, okay, I need to love myself more to then start to do the affirmations and the vision boards and, coming up with what it is that I want. You have to do it all at the same
yeah,
time. And, we are very complex beings. We can do both at the same time. You need to have focus on one, but stuff is still going on in the back of your head.
yep,
So while you're working on, journaling through your healing process, you're still thinking about all the stuff that you want. It's going on that subconscious level.
yep,
So the affirmations help tweak that, but it's it's not even cyclical. It's like a ball. In order to have the ball in a complete shape, everything has all those pieces have to be there. And if you take one chunk out, then you have a warped ball or a flat ball, depending on if it's foam or if it's, filled with air. So all of it happens at the same time to give you this life that you want. And you have to work on all the steps at the same time. But if you don't have faith and if you don't have the self-worth, as you were saying, then it's not going to matter. And that's that piece of that ball that you take out that now warps your balls.
yeah.
So
Well, I think a lot of people, especially people who've been through something really traumatic, um, they don't know what they want. They don't know who they are. If you don't know who you are, you don't know what you want. And I think that's a huge piece. Now, maybe you've had an idyllic life and you know exactly who you are and you've known what you wanted in your life since you were 2. Great. Yay. That's awesome. Um, I don't personally know anyone like that.
I
So,
don't either.
the people I know have had to deal with a lot. I know someone right now who is trying to figure out how to keep their dwelling place from being condemned
Mm,
because it has gone, for years. It's an older couple. They've been living below the poverty level forever, and they live in a very expensive state to live in. Hello, California. Um, and the county wants the land that they are on, and they're trying to work something out where they don't completely lose their house. And yeah, they've been trying to get help with the roof forever. Yeah, they've been trying to repair things that need repairing. But they, at the same time that they have no help, they've got a situation where a municipality wants to use eminent domain to condemn everything. And then you've got the health department helping the eminent domain because they do need some repairs. That's not an acceptable situation in anyone's book. Would money help them? Absolutely. Is it going to happen? Not likely. So instead of focusing on the money, fortunately they have legal representation now. They're focusing on where do we go now.
mm,
Sometimes the dream you thought you wanted turns out not to be what you need. And a big piece of that is trusting that the universe, God, the aliens, Bigfoot, whoever you believe in, has your back and it will work out. Um, I know someone else right now is talking about founding the Church of Bigfoot. Whatever. Okay.
okay.
Uh,
Go for it.
I'll join. No, it just, you have to look at where people are. And someone going to that couple I was talking about saying, the law of attraction, all you have to do is believe and you'll have all this. In that case, it's not going to work for them. You have to look at what people truly need as well as what people truly want. Sometimes those aren't the same thing. Or sometimes you outgrow things, you know. In their case, this was land that they've lived on for 60 years. In your 20s, yeah, you can do gardening, you can plant fruit trees, you can do all that stuff. In your 80s, maybe not so much. So that's, in my mind, a piece of the puzzle that isn't being talked about. You can't just say, okay, everyone wants money. Here's how
Right.
you do that. Some people really do just want a safe place to live. Other people really do just want a vehicle that runs. You take people where they are. If you're
Can
telling,
we just talk about how their perspective is so empowering because their thoughts are now, where do we go now?
right,
It's not holding on to the loss that's coming with being, 60 years, that's a long time. But
yeah,
now they're looking at all of the possibilities of what's next for us.
yeah,
And they're in their 80s and they're still,
80s.
thinking like what's next. That's so inspiring. I love that.
Well, it didn't come to them easily. I've been
Oh, I'm
talking
sure.
or walking with them, working with them, not walking too, actually, maybe spiritually, for a very long time. And initially, they were, this is not going to happen. We're going to stop it.
Mhm.
And then it was, why?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you ask yourself those hard questions, eventually you'll get an answer. But people are afraid of that. When you have a victim mentality, which a lot of people who have been through a lot of stuff have, it seems like everything is happening to you.
Right.
And what they were able to do, and it did take a while, it was a process, but what they were able to do is go from this is happening to us to this is happening for us, you know. And when you make that switch, things do start happening for you. It's not easy at all.
No, definitely not.
I listen to this sweet old woman scream and cry and curse and everything else, and I'm like, I didn't know you knew those words. But it just, you have to do what you have to do to get to the point where you're not a victim anymore. You know, when I've worked with battered women or in battered people shelters, men get battered too. One of the things that another person who was there, we've kind of tag teamed a lot of events, and she had what she calls scream therapy. And she says, I don't care who did what to you. Right now, I want you to stand up and scream at them. Say everything you should have said, but you were afraid to say. And she would have these very timid, sitting in the corner, curled up in a ball, women screaming at, you know, at the top of their lungs to the point where they could barely talk later. And it was just incredibly cathartic to get it out. And I talk a lot about getting things out of your body. And sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to make the room in your body for the good things to come.
Yes.
If you're in your life and you're holding on to every bad thing that's ever happened to you, there's no room. You know, you're not going to have good things. There's no room in your life. Let that stuff go. You know, throw it away, put it in an energy ball and drop kick it. That's what I do all the time, actually. You know, you have to start where you are and realize you're not going to be there forever. And I think that's something too people don't talk about when you're making big changes. It feels like it takes forever to get through them. And you have to have patience with yourself. And they don't teach that either. There's a lot of things they don't teach.
That's so true. I know we mentioned the 7 different principles, and we
Mhm.
might have some follow-up shows where we talk about
Yeah,
that. But, you know, and it's not, they did the work though. And I think that's the important thing to point out is it's not something that necessarily intuitively came to them.
right,
The changing of their perspective, they put the work in to
right.
actually now be at the point of this is happening for me and not to me, and they're no longer in that victim mentality. And that I think is still something that, you know, is very inspirational. I've talked before how Angelina Jolie used to do, I don't know if she still does anymore, the underwater screaming therapy, because screaming into the water preserved a little bit more, as far as it's not necessarily putting it out into the universe, because even,
Right.
you know, putting out negative energy, and that's something else we could talk about on a different show. But she would do it in the water, so it was a little bit more of a container, so it wasn't necessarily leaking that negative energy back to her. But there's so much to be said about letting it go. And, you know, as I mentioned earlier, it's something that you work on at the same time, and you're allowed to be angry and you're allowed to be sad, and it's not, you're not sitting there, you're not staying in it, you're moving yourself through that so that you can get to a better state or a higher purpose for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's everyone has a different technique. I did a video the other day, whatever it was, about dark night of the soul. And what I tell people to do, and this works well for this as well, is make an energy ball between your hands. When you feel it can be as big as you want, it doesn't matter. As long as you feel the energy and visualize a ball, always make it clear, because what you're going to do then is you're going to see pieces of like charcoal coming out of your heart chakra. Those are all the wounds, all the trauma, all the self-hatred. When working through that a lot with a lot of people. Who knew millennials all hate themselves? I had no idea. Uh, but you see all of that coming out of your body. It doesn't have to come from your heart. That's just where it settles. And into that ball. If you make your energy ball see-through, you can see all the pieces of junk in there. And what I do is I drop kick it, because that ball that you put it in is going to transmute everything into divine love and light. So it's not staying around you. You throw it, kick it, whatever you need to do. I had someone the other day tell me, okay, I did that and I don't recommend watching it shatter because it splashes on you. Okay, good to know, So, but if you want to use that, I hear from students it's very effective. You have to do it more than once, but you have to make room for the good stuff. And when you make the room, don't put the bad stuff back in. This is room I'm making for good stuff to come into my life. If you start there, the whole law of attraction makes a whole lot more sense. At least it did for me.
And if that's too complicated, write it out on paper. If you're more of a linguistic person, writing it down, writing all that down, and then burning the paper or shredding it up, whatever is symbolic for you. If you're an artist, you can paint it on a canvas and then
Yep.
burn the canvas, whatever it is to get it
You have
out.
to
And
get
then
it out.
it's a visual thing. Like you're moving it in, writing it down, talking it out. I don't recommend talking it out because you can end up talking yourself in circles and it's not necessarily a concise thing.
Right.
Writing it out, drawing it out, painting it out, boxing it out, if that boxing bag is, that punching bag is, you can visualize that's, all the things that you don't want to carry in yourself anymore and you're beating it out of you. Whatever it is that you need to do, just move it out.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, Kelly, don't go back. And you're going to go back. You're going to go back, but just move it faster.
Yeah.
Don't sit with it. Don't live in it. Move it faster, get it out.
Yeah. Well, the thing also that people forget is healing is done in a spiral. It's not one and done.
Yeah.
Every time something comes up and you heal it, the next time it comes up, it's going to come up in a deeper place. That's normal. Doesn't mean you failed. Doesn't mean,
Yeah.
see, I told you it doesn't work. I've heard that from several people recently. It's gonna keep coming back up until it's completely healed. And even then, after it's completely healed, it may come back up and you may look at it and go, wow, I survived something really horrible. And it doesn't hit you the same because you've healed it. And you know what you do with it then? You tell your story to other people so you can help them heal. That is also a piece of the law of attraction. It just, it's more than money. It's more than, here, give me your money and I'll tell you how I made you give me your money. And that's what a lot of these programs are.
Yeah.
That was weird. I don't know if anybody heard that sound, but there was a very strange sound over there. Probably dog related. You have to know yourself. You have to know that you can learn through other ways than giving people your money that you don't really have to give. You need to understand that books, go to a library, books are free, as long as you return them. I know a teenager right now who has a very large library, fine, but take them back and they're free. You have to be brave. Be brave enough to listen to these people and their sell pitch and go, you know what, I'm good. I don't need that. I don't need that. I personally know someone who recently filed bankruptcy because they spent over 100,000 attending events for the law of attraction. No. Well, in that case, the law of attraction did work because it took away all their
Somebody
money.
else. Yeah. For somebody else, it did.
But that's not what it's about.
Right.
You know, what will make you happy? Start there. What will make you happy? You know, um, be honest with yourself. If you're in a group of friends, um, I went through this with a young student years ago. She was in a group of people, and by default, because this is a tiny community and there were only so many people her age. So by default, she ended up in this group of people. And she didn't like the same music, and she didn't like the same artwork, and she didn't wear the same clothes, and they were making fun of her for all of these things. And it's just, that's why I started working with her, because she's like, I'm dying here, help me. And we ended up finding through a different community group her people. And they look the same and they act the same, listen
Yay.
to the same music. But if she had listened to people around her, well, this is who's here, she
Yeah.
would have never looked over here. And it's the same community. Our area is weird. There's very strange boundary lines for schools. And she just had to, 10 miles down the road, literally 10 miles down the road. And sometimes we do that to ourselves. We look around and go, well, this is all there is. No, it's not. There's a whole lot more. You just have to be open to it and know yourself, really know yourself. It's, if somebody asked me if I want, what was it? It was some weird thing, a theater group. Yes, we have a theater group out here in the middle of nowhere, that they wanted to do. And I, without hesitation, said, I'd rather have live childbirth with triplet elephants. Thank you, no. And it was some thing that someone locally had written, and they wanted me to help produce it. I'm like, no, no. Not touching that with your 10-foot pole. No. And it was just because I had already said no. Stick to your guns.
Yeah.
If you know something's not right for you, don't force it. If you've said no and they persist, say no louder, or in a different way, so that they really do get it. That's also law of attraction,
Yes.
because we bring into our lives those experiences we allow and that we want. And sometimes what you don't want is even as important as what you do want.
Yes.
So what do you think?
No, that's absolutely true. And the so many of us don't know ourselves because we've been
Right.
conditioned. We don't know what our truths are. We don't remember what it is that we want to do and why we were brought here in the first place. Through the societal conditioning and expectations and all of that, we forgot, what it is that lit us up when we were younger. And part of the law of attraction is the intention, but also, like you said, the knowing, the being very specific. It's not just about, I want a bank account with a lot of money. It has to be even more specific than that, because we have seven, not seven, we have five basic needs. And, security, having a safe place, food and water, psychological fulfillment. Those are the foundations, and relationships. Those are the foundations of what it is that you want. Money can help with that, but you have to be specific as to how you're even going to use that money. The money needs a job, or the money's not. You're going to end
Right.
up as like Scrooge and completely miserable and miserly. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's years and years and years ago, I specialized in coaching people, or teaching people that were pretty successful. And the reason I got away from that was because most miserable people I've ever met in my life. These people had all the money you could want. They could have done anything to make their lives happier. And what they were doing was spending it only on themselves. And anytime you are that self-centered, are you that happy with yourself? Because we do need relationships with other people. we do need to feel valued. And that doesn't mean a financial statement. You
Right.
know, if you are helping someone else, you're generally happier. And that was one of the things, I did a study one time on why, if you are stuck on the side of the road, if you're broken down on the side of the road in certain parts of the country. I used the Deep South because I'm from the South. And the people who will stop and help you that quick have nothing. They're in a junky car. You're wondering why they're not broke down somewhere, but it's because they know what it's like. And they're like, I wouldn't want to be in that position. I'm going to help you. It's empathy. And I think a lot of times when people get so successful that they are in their ivory tower somewhere with stacks of cash around them, like what was that? It was a Donald Duck cartoon, his uncle or somebody. Anyway, it was where he had all the money, but he was
Scrooge
miserable.
McDuck,
There you go.
DuckTales or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It just, money doesn't make you happy. I'm sorry, it doesn't. Yes, it pays your bills. That might make you happy, but money itself is just a tool. It's what you use to make a better life.
Yeah.
And if you are being honest with yourself, a piece of that better life involves helping other people have a better life. That is what is ingrained in us that we refuse to see so often. And if you are just making money to make yourself miserable, okay, I guess that's your right. But money allows you to do things. It's just a tool. And people seem to have put it on a pedestal, especially people in the West, kind of put it on a pedestal. And that's what you should aspire to. That's not what you should aspire to. You can aspire to having money to do things with it. That's a better use of your effort, your time, your life, and the law of attraction, by the way. It perplexes me to no end. Look at what the law of attraction is saying. It's attracting things. You get what you think about because everything is energy. The energy you put out is the energy you're going to get back. It is not a program. It's a lifestyle. It is the way life works, whether you want to see it or not. And I do not understand why people can't just say, oh, that's pretty simple.
Yeah.
I'll get off my soapbox now.
It's interesting because we have so many colloquial phrases that are the law of attraction. What goes around comes around.
Yep.
You reap what you sow. You have the harvest after you've planted those seeds. There's so many biblical verses that have to do with the law of attraction. There's, so many not religious,
Yep.
phrases that have to do with that. I imagine the Grim Reaper at times where, you get what you deserve and what goes around comes around kind of thing. So, we have so many different ways that we express the same exact thing, but we can believe you reap what you sow, what goes around comes around, you get what you deserve, more than we can believe that there's some universal principle that says that what we want, we get.
Yeah, and that disconnect, I don't understand.
I don't understand.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And
It's
I don't,
semantics, right? It's just
yeah,
saying it in a completely different way. But
yeah, I don't get that disconnect. But I think what really happened is that a whole bunch of, what did they call themselves at the time? thought leaders, that's what they were using, who did The Secret, gave people enough to, well, I wish that was true, but you're
Yeah,
conning me.
right.
And that's kind of what we're seeing now in form of a backlash. It just wasn't truthful completely. Um, People need
I
to,
think it was half truth. I don't feel like
yeah,
they didn't say everything and express well enough what needs to be done and what's all encompassing. I
it's
think that
work.
was the biggest issue. Yeah, I mean, everything
Yeah,
is work, no matter what. Even laying down, being lazy is still work.
right.
So, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, they left out that, well, you have to do something part.
yeah.
No, you just think it and it magically appears. I wish that were the case, but no, that is not the case. It because I've been coaching and teaching people for a very long time now. Um, Maybe I hear more about how The Secret really injured people
Yeah.
than a lot of other, you know, a lot of other people would. But it has really hurt people. It has really, really hurt people. It has convinced people. Now, I'm not saying all of these people who were that devastated by The Secret um, maybe didn't need to be in counseling for some area of their life. But I do know that I have encountered people who quit their jobs. Well, I didn't like this job, so I'm going to, a better job is manifesting. I'm going to sit home and watch TV till they knock on my door and offer it to me. Oh, really? You know, but that's kind of what a large segment of the population took away from that. And it's a lot of work. And sometimes what happens is by the time you do the work and you get exactly what you thought you wanted, you've outgrown what you
You've
thought you
changed. Yep.
wanted, and that's normal too. It's all part of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that the people who are still begrudgingly angry towards The Secret are getting exactly what they deserve, and what has went around came back around to
Yeah,
them, because if they're still carrying that much animosity and they haven't done anything
right.
to look into why or to dig deeper, and they're taking this at face value, then I mean the law of attraction is absolutely 100% working for them, just not in the way that they want it to, because they haven't expanded beyond that. And it has hurt a lot of people. I have a guest that I on my show, her episode hasn't dropped yet, but she wrote a book because she saw the same thing. There was so much that she's from Australia, and it's not The Secret, it's something completely different that
Right.
she saw going on, an American based practice here with, now that you're getting into the Akashic records and all other types of really diving down, but she was like, this is not okay. People don't understand basic
Right.
terminology. They don't understand all of these other things that are supposed to go along with it. And you're putting out half truth. So she's created a whole entire business around that. And you and I have had this conversation on this show even
Yep.
about how it's just done such a disservice.
Yep.
But accountability and taking matters into your own hands is part of it as well. That's part of the work. That's part of the intention and all of the other things that are encompassing with the law of attraction. So,
Absolutely. I think people will always fall for a get rich quick
yeah.
schemes, always.
Yep.
But
Yep.
you have to understand those things don't work. And
You can't go at it with a place of desperation, because
no,
that's scarcity, that's lack, that's the negative, and that's bringing back exactly what it is that you're putting out. If you're going into it with desperation or fear or anxiety, that's what you're going to get back. It's not
yeah,
100%. It's not your own truth. So, yeah.
yeah. I think people are afraid to look at themselves. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's, I had a conversation with a woman one time who was beaten to within an inch of her life
Oh,
because she got between her husband and her son because he was wailing on their son. I think he was like 5 at the time.
oh my God.
And in talking with her after, I used to do events, kind of like a motivational thing for people who had no motivation at all. And she came up to me after I finished and she said, "Can we talk?" And the story she told, sorry, it was a severe story. And what she said to me was, "I slapped my son once, and he was little, and he had pulled my hot cup of coffee off the counter on top of him. And I slapped his hand. And she thought she deserved being beaten later because she slapped his hand. And those are the people that are being preyed upon by this industry." Sorry. I have never forgotten her. And that's probably 30 years ago. And it just, I think of her when I see someone's advertisement for their program. Because what she asked me was, "I want to take this program and I need $200 to take this program." That's who they're preying on. And I had to share that because it's going to touch someone else. And maybe, just maybe, it will wake up some of the people who are doing these things. And they're not giving people the whole truth. And they're not giving people the whole story about how much work it is. That's the whole point. That's why I do what I do, is because people need the information. So anyway, haven't done that on a show yet. You have to really stick up for yourself. You have to really know who you are and what's right for you. And if you are in a position where you've gone through crap, don't give anyone your money.
Yeah.
Except maybe a counselor. Because I've heard some horror stories. And that happened before The Secret came out, but it was after the whole "let me show you how to make millions" thing happened, or it was starting at that time. And the city I lived in at that time was at the forefront of all of this. Get rich, you'll be happy. No, you won't. So, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't.
So I think we have about 2 minutes left. I think we're going to leave it there.
Yeah, I think so.
Please consider what you're putting out into the world. Please consider who you're doing business with. You can be doing a really big disservice. And we'll get into the karma of that in another show if you want. Because the law of attraction works there too. And if you're one of these people selling to people who can't afford what you're selling, there's a karmic debt you're incurring. So we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.